There is this prince who lives on an asteroid. From that little plant, a flower blooms and unfolds its petals, and she's beautiful. There is a certain attraction. The prince has a certain innocence, and the rose is charming and attractive. The usual story. So then he learns the way of love. The fox teaches him how to move from attachment to love. So the prince loves sunsets, and because the planet is very small, so he can enjoy any number of sunsets. And then we have the snake. And what does the snake represent? Liberation. So when he experiences the thorns in the relationship, so I'm not very sure how many in the audience have taken the pains or experienced the delight of going through this reading. I'll narrate it for you. This is a very small story. Somewhat in the form of kids' picture books. In fact, pictures are not merely illustrations here. They form a very integral part of the storyline. Without those pictures, the story can't even move ahead. So I was small when I first got this book. That was a translation, Hindi translation. And it captivated me because even after several readings, there remained this delightful doubt that there was more to the reading. In fact, every second sentence had layers that invited exploration. There is nothing tough, complex, or unintelligible about the reading. At the same time, as a kid, I would not get the feeling that I have comprehended it. There was always something hiding behind the words and the pictures. So I could never really get over and move on. The story never reached a completion or closure for me. That's one reason I remembered it. Then there was a period of around 10 years, 12 years, when I got into serious academics, entrance exam preparation, boards, then JEE, then undergraduate studies, then post-graduation. And I forgot the little prince for a while. And then in the year 2003, I floated a, a program for students of executive MMBA. It was a leadership development program. It was called PLTL, Perspectives in Leadership Through Literature. So the mode there was to have readings from classical literature, and the class, the batch would go through the reading, and then one group among them would make a presentation on the reading, and the rest of the class would engage them. So when I was drafting the course content for PLTL, among many other serious readings, I included The Little Prince as well. So it stood out because the other readings were works of classical gravitas. There would be Mudra Rakshas, there would be Death of a Salesman, there would be The Art of War. There would be 1984, Brave New World, Don Quixote. And I was using those readings to go to the inner root of leadership. Leadership that pertains first to leading oneself before one turns to others to lead or guide them. So the course had these 20 readings, and among them was included The Little Prince as well. And that was that period of around 4 years when I would be spending my weekends conducting PLTL classes. And some of the fondest memories are from the Little Prince sessions. So after 1990-91, The Little Prince came back in 2003, remained with me till around 2006. That was when Advaita Life Education was founded. And the Prince left once again. And now, 20 years later, the Prince is back. Why should the Prince now form a part of the Gita curriculum? Because from where I look at him today, this is a non-dualistic fairy tale. This is an Advaitic fairy tale. Sounds not just interesting but also contradictory, right? What does Advaita have to do with fairies? Yeah, Advaita has a lot to do with fairies. And this, The Little Prince, is an Advaitic fairy tale, right? Things haven't changed by much. The students of my course were supposed to come prepared with the reading. So that was their homework, so that we could straight away launch into the discussions, but that rarely happened then. And understand that's also not to happen tonight. So I'll have to first lay down the case facts, which is the details of the story in front of you, and only then we can proceed to extract some meaning, some value. Yep. So what is the story about? So the author first, Antoine de Saint-Exupéry. There is a surreal element to all aspects of The Little Prince, including the relationship of the story to its author. Something happens to the little prince at the end of the story, and not exactly, but much the same thing happens to its author in 1944. He was a pilot in the French Air Force, died young, just 44 years of age. Just 1 year prior to his demise, he had completed The Little Prince. He disappeared, and it was only much later that the wreckage of his plane was found. What's the story about? So there is this prince who lives on an asteroid. All right. No, we'll follow the order the story takes for itself. So the protagonist of the story, the narrator, and we can take the narrator as the author, though that's not necessary, but let's take the narrator and the author as one. So the narrator has had a plane crash, right? Has landed in Sahara, and that's thousands of miles from any kind of habitation or civilization, right? And he's trying to somehow repair his engine. Something has failed there, and he doesn't have much water. Water he has would last only 8 days. And he encounters this little creature, the Little Prince. And the author has had an uneventful, typical kind of childhood and schooling. He used to be an imaginative kid, but he would draw something, and that would not be approved by the adults. So there are some funny drawings there, and you must refer to them, especially those who haven't gone through the story at all. So all those drawings are part of the storyline. So the author, the pilot, was crashed in Sahara. As a kid, he used to draw these pictures, and they were taken as funny and odd, and so he was discouraged from drawing, and instead he became a pilot. But he still retained that childish artist and also harbored a subtle grudge. So that's the background of the narrator or the author. And now, having crashed, he encounters this little creature who is oddly dressed. And turns out he has landed on the Earth from some other planet. And his planet is a small asteroid. And there are many funny details about his planet. His planet is so small that if a tree grows too large, then the planet risks being split apart by its massive roots. So the job of the prince, and the prince is the only inhabitant of his planet. The planet is so small. So the job of the prince on his planet is to keep looking for sprouts of massive trees. What are they called as? Baobabs. Yeah. And pluck them before they gain roots and become dangerous. So that's how his life is, and the planet has, besides the prince, 3 volcanoes. 2 of them are active and 1 of them is extinct. And the prince regularly cleans the volcanoes so that he can warm his breakfast on them. You know, the size of volcanoes is proportional to the size of the planet. So that's how big the volcanoes are. So the prince loves sunsets, and because the planet is very small, so he can enjoy any number of sunsets. He just has to take 3 steps. You know, because the asteroid is round, at any point in time, the sun is setting somewhere on the asteroid. And it's so small that he can just take a few steps and reach that point, and the prince loves sunsets. Now, something happens to break the monotony. One little seed comes flying from somewhere and germinates. Turns out it's a rose. It's a rose flower. It's a rose flower. Now the prince is intrigued. What is this new thing on the planet? And slowly, from that little plant, a flower blooms and unfolds its petals, and she is beautiful. The flower is referred to in the feminine, and the prince is charmed. And the rose is dramatic. She talks of all kinds of conceited things. A vain rose. The prince would go to her and say, you know, you are so delicate. How do I protect you? And she'll say, I'm not even afraid of tiger's claws. I have my 4 thorns. And she'll say, I'm the only rose flower in the entire universe. And the prince would be taken in because the prince does not know the entire universe. So he would believe her and he would think, yeah, she is so unique. She is the only rose in the entire universe. And there is emotionality, there is drama. And the prince grows attached to the flower. But the relationship is not smooth. Right? She would sometimes taunt the prince that he is not protective enough. She would say, I hate drafts, gusts of cold air. And why can't you arrange for a proper screen for me? um, why can't you arrange for a glass shelter for me? And the prince would not know how to reply. At times, the prince would discover that she is lying outrightly. But he would not want to embarrass her. So he would not even disclose that he has caught her lie. So all these things start afresh in the life of the prince. And the prince is a small kid, does not know life too much. And this saddens him. He experiences new emotions for the first time. Something unique, somebody special has arrived. But that is not entirely joyful. The prince feels like weeping at times, and there are instances when the rose too is about to break down. So the prince decides to leave his planet, partly because he is a bit troubled, and partly because he wants to understand life. The prince leaves the planet. And now comes the castigation of adults. 6 or 7 caricatures we have. The prince now travels to several other planets. And what does he find there? Who does he meet there? Adults. Right? And you have adults of all kinds. The adults represent the adult ego. The adults represent the adult ego. So he would find a king who had no subjects at all because he too was living on a planet as small as that of the prince. So he was delighted. He got his first subject when the prince arrived, and he said, "Now you must follow me. You must take orders from me. The entire universe is mine." And the prince is bewildered. He says, "But there is nobody on your planet. Who is following your orders?" He says, "I order the cosmos to run." The prince says, "How?" He says, "When I order, the sun would set." The prince asks, "Okay, fine, show me, order the sun to set." He says, "No. To maintain harmony, I order the sun to set exactly at 6:30 p.m. So this represents the ego obsessed with authority. And then he goes to another planet where he meets a drunkard, a tippler. And he asks the tippler, "Why are you drinking so much?" And he says, "Because I'm ashamed." He says, "Why are you ashamed? What are you ashamed of?" He says, "I'm ashamed of drinking. And because I'm ashamed of drinking so much, so I drink so that I can forget my shame." The prince says, "These adults are really funny people." Then he goes to another one where there lives an accountant or a rich man, and he's counting everything all the time. And the little prince interrupts him and he asks him, "What are you counting continuously? Millions, billions, but what exactly are you counting?" He says, "I'm counting something that I own." "What is it?" He says, "All these stars." He says, "How do you own them?" "Does somebody else own them? If nobody owns them, then I own them." Really mad. Then he goes to another planet where he finds that there is an obedient beautiful man, very obedient and very beautiful and sincere in carrying out orders from wherever he received them. So what is he doing? He is switching on a light and switching off a light. And what is that light? That's some kind of a street light. Because the planet is so small, so every 2 minutes, there is a new day, which means the day lasts only 2 minutes, and there is night for 2 minutes, and day for 2 minutes, and night for 2 minutes. And his job is to take care of the only street light that the planet has, one street light. So the moment the night falls, the light has to be switched on. So he switches it on, but no sooner has he switched it on, comes the day. So he switches it off, and he stands there and he asks him, since how long have you been doing it? And he says, I don't know. Why are you doing it? Because that's a tradition. Because that's how things have always been. So I'm just following what's always been done. It's very funny. And then there are a couple of other instances. Who are the ones? The geographer. And there is this geographer sitting there with a map and saying, I know all the corners of the universe, this, that. Says, but have you been there? He says, no, I haven't been there, but I know. So geographer represents the ego full of conceptual knowledge, who has never lived anything, never had a direct encounter with facts, but is living in maps and words. A strange geographer who has never been anywhere, but has a map of everything. And who else? That comes later. Think.
Lamplighters.
The lamplighter I already told. So now he asks, I think he asks the geographer, now where to go, because all I am seeing is very small planets with one funny occupant each. So he's told you go to the Earth. It's a larger place and you will meet a lot of people and diverse experiences. So he comes to the Earth. He comes to the Earth and he lands in the Sahara. And this is where the plane of the narrator has crashed. This is where the plane of the narrator has crashed. So now these two meet, the little prince and the pilot. The pilot who is the narrator. And they talk of all kinds of things, and they could never really settle with each other in terms of comprehending each other fully. Because the little prince represents a child's ego, not yet socially conditioned. Whereas the narrator is a grown-up, he's a pilot. But still they do have some kind of chemistry and they have some beautiful conversations. And one day, the little prince comes across a nursery of roses where there are 5,000 roses. And he is heartbroken to find that his rose had lied to him, saying, I am the only rose in the universe. There are 5,000 roses. But he says, I'll never tell this to her, otherwise, she will feel awkward. So now he meets a fox, and the fox becomes a kind of guide. And the fox says, I'll teach you what taming means. That's a word particular to the story, taming. He says, what is taming? He says, you see, there are so many foxes and so many roses and so many human beings. But when we get into a friendship that involves meaning, then I have tamed you and you have tamed me. Otherwise, I am one fox among a million foxes and you are one kid among a million kids. And so, in some sense, the fox teaches the kid what love means. Not pure love, but some kind of an introduction. And then one day the pilot finds the little prince talking to a snake. And he's telling the snake it's been exactly 1 month, one year, exactly 1 year. It would be 1 year tomorrow. So tomorrow is the day. Tomorrow is the day. And the pilot has grown a fondness for the prince, and he realizes what the prince is now up to. And the prince is discussing with the snake the exact spot where he had landed on the desert, and he says, I'll be standing on that exact spot, which means since it's been exactly 1 year now, my star will be exactly overhead. So I'll be standing there and you'll be sending me back there. The pilot tries in all kinds of ways to convince the prince to not to do that. But the prince says, no, I have to go. And so you have to go through the story. The statements everywhere are very profound. Every second statement is loaded with deeper meaning. And the pilot is full of tears. And the prince tells him, I'll be leaving just the shell behind. I need to go. And the pilot tries to keep watch on the prince, but the prince somehow escapes. And before the pilot can catch up, he finds the snake has bitten the prince, and the prince leaves. And then at the end, the pilot says, it's been 6 years now. 6 years now that the prince left me. And if any of you ever find a little kid roaming about in a deserted place, you must know that something special is happening here. So that's the story, and I needed to narrate it only because most of us wouldn't have read it. But this kind of narration does little justice to the real art one has to go through it and experience it. What is the thing about? Why did I call it an Advaitic fairy tale? You see, there is the level of vyavahar. Vyavahar. And the prince is living there. And the prince encounters the rose. And the relationship is of illusion and attachment, obviously. There is a certain attraction. The prince has a certain innocence, and the rose is charming and attractive. The usual story. But the prince has one special thing that's needed in the Advaitic process, which is sincerity. When he finds that the relationship is not entirely smooth, he tries to figure out a reason and come to a solution. he doesn't just let the relationship continue as it is. So he leaves. He leaves and travels far and wide. Though all the time he is remembering the rose, remembering being wistful, missing. But still, he doesn't say, let me return and continue with things as they were. At least there was a physical closeness. He doesn't say that. So it's the sincerity that sets him apart. The message here is things will be the Prakritic way for everybody on the plane of Vyavhar, the plane of normal human experience and behavior. We all are born a certain way, and we all go through those experiences, conditioning, emotions. The kid too is a human being. Though one thing that sets him apart is that he isn't socially conditioned. So, trying to find out something beyond his situation, the romantic attachment, the delight there, as well as the sorrow, he travels to the world of adults. And what does he discover there? A lot of social conditioning. A lot of social conditioning. And then he comes to the earth, where he meets the fox. And the fox introduces the prince to love, right? And now the kid is stepping into the Parmarthic zone. Not yet there, but climbing. And then we have the snake. And what does the snake represent? Liberation. The snake represents liberation. So that's the story of salvation in Advaitic terms. One starts in the matrix of relationship. And in that matrix, there is sorrow. Most people choose to remain in that sorrow. But certain individuals, they have sincerity. Right? The prince is shown as an innocent person with sincerity. So when he experiences the thorns in the relationship, he exits, he quits, though he continues to love the rose. And then he goes out to know what the whole thing is all about, to experience the universe. And he meets all kinds of stupid people who represent the adult ego states. And the kid says, no, this is not the solution. This is not the solution. I am physically conditioned, but these chaps, they are conditioned both physically and socially. So the solution does not lie in authority or money or duty or obedience or drinking. My solution does not lie in all these things that adults do. So from there he comes to the earth and meets some kind of a guide or teacher. And There he comes to see that the solution lies in liberation, and a snake is represented as the agent of liberation. Though what is said is that in another way, the prince has now reached the rose. In which way? That the prince is not a single individual in a body now, and the rose is not a single rose now. As long as the prince is one individual, the rose too is one individual. Once the prince leaves the body, which means once the individuality is gone, there is complete union, because the body represents the separation. So in the end, the body of the prince falls, and the pilot says the next day the body too was gone. Somehow the body too disappeared. So from where I look at it today, it's it's a katha, right? This is how Upanishads move into Purans. Provided one interprets the stories rightly. Remember the key points. Everybody is entangled on the Vyavaharik plane. What one requires there is sincerity, right? Another option to move out of the entanglement is become like the adults. Get obsessed with something. Drown out your troubles in money or liquor. That is one option. The prince rejects that option. The prince finds himself in trouble, but he rejects the ways the adults troubleshoot. How do adults troubleshoot? By using all kinds of stupid methods. He says, no, I am in trouble, but I'll not use the ways of the adults. In fact, the story is taken as a solid satire on the ways of adults. The kids mocking the adults. He says, no, the ways of adults are not the solution. So then he learns the way of love. The fox teaches him how to move from attachment to love. And movement from attachment to love results in liberation. Liberation from the body, not really physical death, is represented by the bite of the snake. Getting it? So that's what the story is about. Who says Advaita is dry? See how the classical non-dual framework can represent in something, can result in something so beautiful.
Namaste, Acharya Ji. I am Sambhav. I am an IT professional from Bangalore, and I have been in the sessions for like last 5 months. So while going through this particular reading, my question is that a particular phrase is highlighted a lot in this particular, when the little prince is talking to the fox, when he's talking to the pilot, that is, what is essential is invisible to the eye. So I just wanted to understand, in the light of Vedanta, does this symbolizes the true self, which is not perceptible via senses or forms, or does it symbolize watching the ego to find the root of the attachment? In this case, the prince continuously says, "I wasted so much time on that, and I have tamed that rose. That's why I've developed that attachment for that particular rose, even though there are thousands of roses available." So what that does symbolize? Because I'm confused if this or that.
Both the body and the society train you to value objects. objects. So simply put, this is about valuing something subtler than sensory objects. What is essential is invisible to the eye. What is visible to the eye? Objects. Objects. Huh? So can you move beyond objects? Can you place value on something that is not visible? That is what it is meant to. So this does not really take you to the transcendental truth, the paramarthic plane. It does not take you there, because even thoughts, feelings, emotions, intuitions are not visible to the eye. But this does liberate you from the grip of visible matter, which is visible to the eye. So that's all that is there to this statement.
Okay, got it.
Remember, the little prince starts as someone who is not socially conditioned, but still has all the trappings of the body. He's emotional. He falls in love in the usual way. The relationship between the prince and the rose is so much like any other romantic story. So that's how it starts. What you can gather from the prince is a critique of adult morality and psychology. But from the prince's utterances, you will not come to the ultimate truth, because the prince himself stands in delusion when it comes to the body. Just that he's a kid. He's a kid, sincere kid, innocent kid, not socially conditioned. So what you get from him very powerfully, very truly, is a critique of the adult mind, how the adult mind operates. Seen from the eyes of the kid, you see the senselessness, the absurdity of how the world of adults operates.
Got it. Like, just another confusion I had was that here too he was first, his journey started from outwards, similar to what we see in Vedas to Upanishads, and then he goes all around. He sees
Yes,
stuff and he
yes,
experiments.
yes,
He experiments and then he comes to
yes. So it's like this: in you are born, and you are living in your little universe, and then something powerful happens to you, like a relationship, like a heartbreak, like some kind of failure or betrayal of expectations. Something happens to you, and your little childish world seems no more sufficient, no more consistent. There is a shattering, and that forces you to venture out. That forces you to venture out, or it could force you to plunge yourself deeper into delusion and become one of the normal adults. The kid refuses to become a normal adult. He says, yes, I am experiencing sorrow, but the solution does not lie in becoming a king or a miser or whatever, or a drunkard. That's not the route I'll take. Yes, I'm suffering in love, and if love is what is making me suffer, probably the solution lies in getting deeper into love. Maybe my problem is not that I love, my problem is that I don't love sufficiently. So I want to learn what the whole thing is like. So he comes to the earth, learns love, and that results in a powerful realization. The realization is no love is possible with the body, that the body identified ego cannot love. And that is represented by the prince dropping his body toward the end of the story. And that no love is possible when you have somebody special or unique as the object of your love. As long as you think you have a special and unique body, as we all do, the object of your love will always remain somebody special and unique. And when two divided individuals, A and B, have a relationship, that can never be called as love. Therefore, the story climaxes with the prince dropping the body itself. That need not be taken literally. It's not body that's being dropped, but body identification.
Can it also be referred to as like a tourism to actually understand us? Because right now tourism is like the way is to just for entertainment. Here also traveling for understanding oneself, can one draw parallels to it?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Acharya.
See, one great way of benefiting from the story would be to list some 15-20 statements that appeal the most to you. When I was a kid and I received this for the first time, I remember having scribbled down in my notebook. The text I had was in Hindi. All the statements that to me held a meaning that I was not able to then decipher. Though there is no statement that is complex, everything makes sense even at the first glance. But there are layers. So writing down those statements and staying with them, allowing the statements to speak progressively to you. They'll say one thing to you today and another thing after 2 hours. When we are deeper into the night, you'll find the same statement uttering something deeper, whispering a secret it could not reveal before the night got deeper.
Thank you, Acharya.
Pranam Acharya Ji. I am Vidit. I am a student and I have listening for almost 2 years and from the Gita sessions, of course. And I just can state in how many ways your videos, your insightful talks has helped me. I have just no words to say. Thank you a lot, very much for changing my life. So regarding today's session, when I was going through that story, Acharya ji, I found that that little prince at their first meet, after recognizing that elephant inside that snake properly, the little prince just asks the narrator to draw a sheep for him. Like if we go to the story, then it just states like this, that if you please draw me a sheep. And at last, if we go forward, we found at last we can find that the I'm sorry, actually, I am being a bit nervous. So actually, at last, we can find that the narrator has drawn a box only, and he states like that this is only his box. The seat you asked for is inside. Okay. So my question was that even till the last, we find that the very picture of the box in which the narrator uh, once told the boy that the sheep is inside that, the little princess is happy with it, or at least okay with it, and he leaves. So I was just wondering that does this
No, see,
incident
the
actually
box.
signify the
Wait. I'll the instance our friend is referring to is, so the little prince asks the pilot to draw sheep, and the pilot is drawing sheep, and the pilot, as we know, is not good at drawing, so he's drawing all kinds of sheep, and sometimes the sheep is too thin, sometimes too old. Once he draws a sheep with horns, and he says, no, it's no more a sheep, it's a ram, we don't know anything. So the pilot ultimately draws a box and shows to the little prince. And the prince says, yes, what is it? He says, this is the sheep. And says, how? Says, here's the box and the sheep is inside the box. And this time the prince is very happy. Says, this is the time you got it right. Otherwise you were just sketching nonsense. Hmm? So that gets our friend here very curious. He says, what kind of thing is going on? See, it's an attack on egoic truths. Not that the box represents a sheep more truly than any of the other sketches. Not that. Just a question. Why must you insist that your sketch of the sheep is more real than somebody's imagination of a sheep contained in a box? Are you getting it? It's not as if the sheep in the box is a fact or a truth. It is an alternative. And that alternative is not true but useful. Useful in terms of questioning the egoic insistence on its own sensual truths. Because I can look at the sheep in the drawing with these eyes, therefore, this sheep holds certain validity. Because I can look at this sketch with my eyes, therefore, this particular sheep holds a certain validity. That is the concept being attacked. If you will say that that sheep is real because you can look at it, because it is optically validated, then I will insist that the sheep in the box is equally real because it is mentally validated. At neither side sits the truth. Just that the other side is useful in questioning the usual side, your side. Are you getting it? It's like playing the devil's advocate.
Okay. Yeah, I get it. Yeah. Thank you, Acharya.
Yeah, Namaste Acharya Ji. My name is Nikhil. I'm a postdoctoral researcher at PRL Ahmedabad, and I have been associated with the Gita community for past 1 year. So my question on this, how does the Little Princess lesson on true sight with the heart, not eyes, help us to see beyond the power games
Nikhil,
and the
your
nationalism?
video has turned off again.
He wants me to look at him without my eyes, in the spirit of the prince.
Okay.
Please. You can ask.
Yes, Acharya. So it is based on that. So the lesson, how can it facilitate us from seeing beyond the nationalism and the power games under the certain?
Don't bring in these things. Don't bring in these things of the adults. And the prince has been mocking the adults all the while. Maybe if today the story was written, on one planet the prince would meet a nationalist who was so much of a nationalist that he purged the planet of all anti-nationals and remained finally the only occupant of the planet. And now, because he is the only one occupying the planet, so he can claim that the planet is just one nation and 100% nationalistic.
And I have one thing to ask, like we say, we think that adults are like intelligent and everything, but I think that the child is the one whose mind is not conditioned and not corrupt with the external things, right?
Yeah, that's what the story is about.
Yeah, so that's the thing which I felt very much fascinated about. And Acharya, one thing I want to ask, like, when are you going to come to Ahmedabad? Like, you are touring to many places, and some places which are first time you are touring, but why you're not coming to Ahmedabad?
Yes.
Okay. Because when I see around here also, I feel that it is very much required your presence and your teachings over here. So I feel like that. I mean that the question is coming from that center. Hence, I was asking this question. Yeah.
I'll come. Maybe I am or some other place will invite. I'll come over. Maybe your institution could invite.
Yes, sir. I'm like in contact with the director, and also let's see what goes. I mean, I'm trying.
I go to places that ask me to come with some love, where that loving invitation is there. I do travel. Advaita is not bereft of emotions, is it? In the story has a beautiful rose. The rose is finicky, high-handed, dramatic, emotional, a bit of a liar. all kinds of things are there. It all forms part of the web of human experience. Just that one has to approach that experience with sincerity. That's the word, sincerity. And from that sincerity begins your journey from the normal level of human experience and life. And if you can hold on to that sincerity, finally there is liberation. Advaita and love stories go very well together. Yeah. Without love, there can be no Advaita. So if I'm not coming to your place, you must know what is missing.
Okay. Okay, Acharya Ji.
Yeah.
Namaste, Acharya Ji. I had read this story long time back, and because of you, I got the opportunity to read it again. I think you've answered all the questions that I had, but there is one very striking thing that I wanted to still put across, which was that Little Prince is innocent, he's full of sincerity, and he's wise in his own way, which is beyond his age. So when he's engaging with the pilot, even in the end, when he's being bitten by the snake, just before he says, I'll feel some pain, but don't be disturbed and all, and I'm leaving behind it's just a shell. It's almost like he's not afraid of death. He knows there's something beyond. So when he's engaging with the pilot, it doesn't feel as if he's a child. It feels as if in some way he is the superior of the pilot.
Yep. So what does that tell you about wisdom then?
It's ageless.
No, it reduces with age. And that's essential Advait. The real is always available. It just gets progressively clouded by time. Time clouds the essential. So wisdom is available, but time, which is represented by age, would obfuscate that wisdom. So essentially, the kid, as a rule, has to be wiser than adults, because the kid is yet not exposed to time in the same measure as adults. Are you getting it? And that's the reason why you find great wisdom in the very innocent quips of the prince. When it comes to denoting something pure, we often use the phrase childlike. Childlike. Right? So wisdom is not something to be gained. The process of revelation of wisdom is nothing but the removal of adult conditioning. Remove adult conditioning and wise you already are. Wisdom is not something to be gained or accumulated from outside. One says, please, please, can I have a few nuggets of your precious realization? All that is nonsensical. Wisdom is direct seeing, and direct seeing is something available even to a child. That's why in our course structure, we have Ashtavakra and Nachiketa, both kids. In fact, the little prince would fall in the same age bracket. So one has to ask, how come those kids know so much? But that's not a proper question. The proper question is, how come adults forget what they have already known as kids? That's the right question to ask. How come adults manage to forget or put aside what they have so easily known as kids? Truth is not hidden somewhere, not concealed, not veiled. It lies in the direct seeing of innocent eyes. Right? So you have at the lowest level the 5 or 6 caricatures, the adult personalities. Then you have the prince and the rose as they are in their romantic relationship. And then finally you have the prince as he is when finally bitten by the snake. So these are the 3 levels of consciousness. The bottommost level is what the story pokes fun at. The very interesting adults, they all lie at the bottom of the pyramid of consciousness. Much better than them are the prince and the rose on their little planet and their accidental affair. And then finally, you have the prince who was anyway not deeply socially conditioned and is now finally prepared to give up the physical conditioning as well. The freedom from physical conditioning is represented in a literal way in the form of freedom from physicality itself through snake bite. So these are the three levels that the story represents. And at each level, there is no accumulation. There is just dropping. As you go downwards, each level is heavier than the one above. The bottommost level is the heaviest. The adults are both physically and socially conditioned, psychologically conditioned. We must have money, we must have an empire, we must have this, I must have that. So that's where the load is the maximum. Then come the rose and the prince, and this is where the burden is only of the normal bodily instincts. The rose looks charming. The prince is physically young. So there is not much social load, but still the body sits as a weight on consciousness. And finally, with his experiences and sincerity and adventures, the prince learns something and relieves himself of the last remaining load as well, which is the weight of the body. And gone.
There's one more thing, Acharya Ji. So in the story, Prince is disturbed because of the rose, and he expresses his suffering on several occasions, but he's not really disturbed. That's another,
Yeah, because action is the antidote to despair, as they say. The prince is doing the maximum he can. Therefore, there is no confined chamber to keep echoing back his disturbance to him. When we are disturbed, it's as if we are standing in front of two parallel mirrors in an echo chamber. So our disturbances keep coming back to us to make us more disturbed, much like the drunkard. Why are you drinking, sir? Because I'm ashamed. What are you ashamed of? Drinking. You see, you look at this feedback loop. How do you break this loop? When you are disturbed, act, move to get to the source of your disturbance. And that's what the prince is doing. Therefore, in spite of being disturbed, deep within he remains untouched. But if you are disturbed and let the disturbance become the status quo, become an accepted state, a state of some kind of equilibrium, then you are settled in the disturbance. The prince refuses to be settled. He ventures out. this star, this asteroid, that planet, this person, that person, this discussion, that discussion, and that results in liberation. So the disturbance in the relationship is used by the prince as an opportunity. It is always a relationship that will touch you, move you, annoy you, and disturb you and break you in ways nothing else can. Right? And that is to be taken as your ticket. Fly away, as the prince does. And the prince is involving himself in interplanetary travel, you see. If he is disturbed, he says, I won't stay here. I would rather fly off to other places and see what the whole thing is about. Is growing up a solution? That must have crossed his mind. Is growing up a solution? So he visits 5 or 7 different kinds of adults and he says growing up is not a solution. And then he realizes that if love is a problem, then only deeper love is the solution. If body identified love is a problem, then love free of ego is the solution.
So on the contrary then, like what does it tell us about the pilot? The pilot is appreciating this little prince. He's almost fallen in love with him by the end of the book, but has not been able to do what the prince has done.
So the pilot was much like the prince, right? Remember the boa constrictor and all the paintings that he... Yeah, so the message is don't become a pilot. You might be nearing that point of no return. But yes, the pilot does something beautiful. He survives to narrate the story. Right? And not only does he narrate the story, he says it's been 6 years now. And in some way he is still waiting for the prince. The prince has done something beautiful. He was suffering in love. And now he has left his friend, the pilot, with the same kind of love. Now it depends on the pilot to start his own journey. The rose, in a way, enabled the prince to start a journey. And the prince should now have enabled the pilot to start a new journey. It's the normal kind of love that can be so productive, you see. Therefore, I do not understand people who cannot even have normal relationships. Your journey will not even begin. How will the story begin if that rose thing wouldn't have accidentally landed on his little asteroid? That conceited rose who begins by saying, I'm not a weed. I'm not a weed, I'm special. So then there are those who say, we are brahmacharis and therefore, sir, your story won't even begin. Liberation is about bringing it to a closure. How can it come to a closure if it doesn't even start? Some people wrote on the community, they said, what is spiritual about this story? They said, where are no mantras here, no Sanskrit, and nobody is telling us to renounce everything. Instead, There is this silly rose flower and that childish boy, and these two are playing random games, uttering nonsense. Where is Adhyatma in this? How will you fall in love with liberation if you can't love even a lady? I'm not asking you to go down a particular lane. I'm again just playing the devil's advocate. It's the whole game of liberation is very, very romantic in a sense. Have you seen how the saints have sung of the truth? Pia, sage, अपनी छब बनाए के जो मैं पी के पास गई, जो छब देखी पीऊ की मैं अपनी भूल गई. What kind of adhyatma are you talking of without love? And then you say, no, but sir, what you are quoting is carnal love, physical love. Love for the Supreme has to be transcendental. Are you transcendental? Carrying that 80 kg body, you are talking of everything non-physical. Let your breath be non-physical. Let your breath be non-physical. Let your food be non-physical. You are so non-physical, your love is non-physical. Why eat physical food? Such hypocrisy. I'm not saying love has to be physical. What I'm saying is, if you are incapable of loving a human being, your journey is unlikely to even start. That doesn't mean that you have to chase women on the Valentines. That's not the idea. Or men, whatever. That's not the idea. What I'm talking of is a beating heart. Some appreciation of beauty in whatever form. So that you can at least start from somewhere. Obviously, you don't have to remain at the sensual, carnal, physical level. You don't have to remain there. But you must start. Most people, the spiritual ones, they attempt killing it at the start itself. Liberation aborted. Why? Because, you see, liberation is a love child. So you had to abort it. Make a poster out of this one. One fellow was, this very, very recently, one of the open sessions, somebody gifted me, it was a beautiful portrait. Saint Kabir and me, and I am and some really realized one on the community wrote, but all this is so physical. Why is Acharya Ji showing some reverence to a mere body, and that to an imaginary body? Because nobody knows what Kabir Sahib looked like. So this is some sketch drawn from imagination. And Acharya Ji never met Kabir Sahib, and this sketch is showing him bowing to the master. So all this is just not just physical, but also imaginary. This is not spirituality. Sir, I am a very basic physical human being. Where I sleep, I have this large a portrait of Saint Kabir. I also have a large framed photograph of my mortal physical father. And I'm not going to claim that because the truth is non-material and non-physical, therefore one can have no emotion towards his guru or pita. I look at those pictures, those images, and it helps me. Of course, the realized ones would say, oh, this is mere mortal weakness and you are body identified and therefore attached to images. It's all right. I want to remain attached to images. As long as I'm speaking to this camera and looking at you there, that face, that image on the screen, it's important that I remain physical, no? What if I just vanish in thin air? Because you see, I am transcendental. The community in some ways has moved far ahead of me. They have all become non-physical. A lot of them. Remain human, remain humble. No need to pretend. All this transcendental mysticism is just hypocrisy. It's all right to have a human face, a human body, human eyes, and it's all right for human tears to roll down your human cheek. Advaita and tears also go well together. It's all right to weep. You're not supposed to be some mystical superwoman who can't weep, who can't whisper, who can't shout. All this is fine. It's a dance of the ego. It's in that dance that it observes its freedom. Remember, the ego cannot be dissolved without its own consent. A lot of people here are making that mistake. We are objectifying ego as if ego is something here on this surface, this table, and we are out to attack the ego. No, you are the ego. How will you be liberated without your own consent? Therefore, don't attack yourself. Be kind. Understand yourself. Acknowledge what you truly are at the Vyavharik level. I'm not talking of the formless truth. Acknowledge your body, acknowledge your thoughts, mind, emotion, everything. There has to be a sincerity, an honesty. Otherwise, it becomes suppression and a lot of hypocrisy. But what I'm referring to must not amount to indulgence. I'm talking of observing tears, not shedding crocodile tears. There is a difference there, right? Yes, the eyes do well up. A lot of times without one's permission. That's fine. One is not supposed to be abashed of that. The prince is remembering the rose all the time, all the while. Yeah? And it's this sorrow that eventually leads to his liberation. Hmm? What else can fuel liberation? What else can impel you to be liberated? Sorrow. What else? That sorrow has to remain. If there is no sorrow, is there any point in liberation? Please tell me. If there is no sorrow, let things continue as they are. A lot of people on the community would be disappointed tonight because we are talking of something so human, so carnal, so earthly. And they'll say, how does this sit with the Ribhu Gita? Ribhu Gita said, no man, no woman, no rose, no thorns, no snake, no bite. And now man, woman, snake, bite, fox, rabbit, plane, pilot, all kinds of dualities have appeared. What's going on? Now this is what is going on. And you are in it. The utterances in the story, if you can look at them, they are all dualistic. But when you allow yourself to sink there, you find you are disappearing, and that is non-duality. One cannot come to non-duality except through duality. It is with sincerity that duality has to be approached, and the little prince had that sincerity. Approach the dualistic game with sincerity, and that's the process of liberation. One fellow even wrote, he said, Acharya Ji is always talking of climate change, and he's saying all these kids that are born, they are at the cost of lakhs of animals and lakhs of trees. And still, when all the women in the community, in the sessions, they come to Acharya Ji with their kids, he too starts behaving like a kid, as if he's so happy seeing kids, playing with them. Kids are supposed to be evil, right? I'm amazed if this is what has gone out to you. No, but the kid is just a bundle of conditioning. Why is Acharya Ji playing with kids? Why does he look so fond of kids? The kid, he says, is just a thing of conditioning. He keeps uttering, from the womb emerges a thick mass of flesh which is nothing but conditioned. But look how his eyes glow up the moment these kids come. He should in fact get hold of these kids and just throw them out of the auditorium. What kind of liberation are you talking of that cannot accommodate a kid? If you look at a baby, a 6-month-old or a 3-year-old, and all that you see is conditioned flesh, then you're not liberated. You're dead. No, you're worse than dead. You're a pervert. No, I'm not asking you to produce more kids. Don't jump to the other end. There is this life. What else do you have? This life has to be seen for what it is. One has to pass through the entire spectrum of experience very honestly, very sincerely. That doesn't mean that you have to succumb to conditioning. That doesn't mean that you have to become like one of those insane adults in the story. You don't have to become a greedy accountant or a stupid king. No, you don't have to do that. But it's all right to play with a kid in your arms, to experience attraction towards a rose. That's fine. You haven't become a sinner. Just don't lie to yourself. In that relationship, there would be sorrow. Just as you allowed yourself to experience the relationship, now with equal honesty, experience the sorrow also. And that sorrow will impel you to look for the truth, to look for something better, something higher. You see why I detest when people divide the path of knowledge, Gyan Marg, from the path of love and devotion. Because there can be no realization without love. How are you dividing these two? The path of knowledge requires the deepest kind of love. The path of knowledge necessitates deep love. The knower, the so-called realized one, has to be an extraordinary lover, not just a normal lover. Without the deep sincerity to love, there can be no revelation, no realization, no liberation. Why are you taking love? Why are you taking jnana or knowledge as something dry?
Thank you, sir.
Just download the Acharya Prashant app, and there you go to the community section, and you have live testimonials streaming in at the rate of 1 every 5 minutes. I'm seeing lives change in thousands, if not millions, every day in front of my own eyes. We are doing it. We have actually done it.
Join the community of more than 2 lakh participants on the Acharya Prashant app. Your first month is completely free. You'll get full access to Gita Mission. On the app, you will get regular live sessions, daily exclusive conversations with Acharya Prashant, access to the vibrant Gita community, wisdom exams, curated news, audiobooks, quotes, and much more. Search Acharya Prashant on Google Play Store or Apple App Store and download now.